You ever play with a puzzle so simple a first grader can get it, but so complex it has driven the world's greatest mathematicians completely crazy for almost a
Oh,
century?
you mean the Collatz conjecture? Yeah, the 3m plus 1 problem. It's essentially a numerical black hole.
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at this fascinating paper called The Omega Genesis Protocol by Timothy J. Dillon. He claims to have, well, not only solved this impossible math problem, but actually translated that exact solution into enterprise AI software and somehow into Vatican theology.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a massive stretch at first, but the underlying mission of Dillon's work is actually quite cohesive. He is basically trying to figure out how to mathematically map and, ultimately tame chaos.
Okay, let's unpack this starting with the math itself. The rules of the Collatz conjecture are incredibly basic. You just pick any positive number. If it's even, you divide by 2. If it's odd, multiply by 3 and add 1.
Right, you just keep doing that over and over.
Yeah, and every number we have ever tested eventually plummets into this repeating loop of 4, 2, 1. Mathematicians call them hailstone numbers because they bounce wildly up and down before finally falling.
But proving that literally every number to infinity will fall into that loop, that is where previous attempts completely failed. They tried to track the raw, chaotic height of each hailstone as it bounced around.
So Dillon tries a totally different approach called valuation depth. I was trying to picture this. Is it like trying to map the 3D topology of a mountain range instead of just recording its highest peaks?
Not quite, actually. What's fascinating here is less about the shape of the mountain and more about finding the hidden gravity wells that pull the numbers downward. Instead of looking at every single step a number takes, Dillon's method groups the odd-to-odd transitions together.
Oh, right. I see.
Yeah, think of it like zooming out on a map so you only see the major highways instead of every single side street. By compressing those steps, he can predict where the traffic inevitably flows.
And doing that allows him to basically isolate the numbers that might go rogue.
Precisely. He identifies 4 specific families of numbers, which he calls S, R, H, and C. And those are the ones that could theoretically escape the loop.
Wait, but do they?
No, they don't. He proves mathematically that those families are entirely empty. He forces a deterministic descent. In his computational stress tests, he generated these massive blocks of numbers to simulate this, and 0 survivors escaped. The chaos is, well, mathematically bounded.
Which brings us to the text side of his paper, because if we can predict exactly when a wild math equation will inevitably stabilize, we can theoretically apply that exact same detection logic to a computer network, right?
Exactly. Dillon spent time in technical leadership at places like Microsoft and Nike, and he built a framework around this math called the CVP spin overlay. It's essentially a structural intelligence engine for AI and cybersecurity.
But I'm still wondering, how does an arithmetic loop actually translate into stopping a cyber threat?
Well, this raises an important question. It really comes down to identifying when a system is converging towards stability or, diverging into chaos. The Omega Genesis engine takes the logic used to bound those hailstone numbers and applies it directly to software behavior.
So it mathematically scores the system's actions in real time.
Yes, it acts as an active governance layer.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Is it like an invisible digital guardrail? But instead of just being a static barrier that a swerving car crashes into, the system is constantly calculating the car's trajectory.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
It senses the mathematical signature of an impending crash, the divergence,
Right.
and actively forces the steering wheel back to the center lane before the tires even slip.
That is it, exactly. It senses the instability, normalizes the data points using that same structural logic, and routes an intervention. It is basically injecting the mathematical certainty of the Collatz resolution directly into unpredictable AI models.
Okay, bounding AI is one thing, but here's where it gets really interesting. Dillon makes a massive philosophical leap from there. He takes this framework for forcing rogue software back to a stable center and applies it to human morality.
Yeah, he actually drafted a theological extension of this called the Omega Point, which was prepared for Pope Leo XIV. And, whether you buy into his theology or not, you have to appreciate the audacity of trying to turn St. Augustine's concept of grace into a literal mathematical equation.
I know, right? It's wild.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, he models dispersion as sin, or entropy,
Yeah.
basically the chaos in the system, and syntropy is modeled as grace or order.
The mechanics he lays out are just wild. He has this formula, M2, forgiveness, curvature, release. It basically dictates that to clear a historical deficit, like a past wrong, your present syntropy has to mathematically exceed the past dispersion.
He is literally quantifying grace.
Yeah.
He argues that virtues aren't just abstract ideas, they operate like limiting functions within a system.
But I have to push back a bit here. He even cites Augustine to claim that love acts as a gravitational weight. But come on, can acts of kindness actually act as physical forces warping the space between us? It sounds a bit absurd.
It does sound like science fiction if you picture kindness literally moving coffee cups across a table. But he is arguing from a systems perspective. Think about it. If a human mind, or an entire society, is basically a complex biological network, then virtues like humility and forgiveness act as algorithms.
Algorithms that prevent the network from falling into destructive, chaotic feedback loops.
Exactly. Humility becomes a negative gradient that stops erratic pride from tearing the system apart. Peace is just the mathematical limit of sustained order.
Wow, what a mind-bending journey. Just to recap for everyone, we started with an elementary arithmetic, loop-halving evens and tripling odds, moved into real-time AI guardrails, and ended up at a mathematical theology of grace.
It really forces you to reconsider the boundaries between pure logic, technology, and philosophy.
Absolutely, which leaves you, the listener, with this thought to mull over. If human virtues, like humility and forgiveness, are ultimately just mathematical operators that reduce systemic chaos, could we one day literally hard-code morality into the foundational physics of artificial intelligence? Will we be able to program that chaotic pinball machine of life so the ball always lands on grace?